This toy line is the biggest officially licensed joke I've ever seen.
When you think about an articulated Godzilla figure, what line comes to mind first? SH MonsterArts, Hiya Toys, Super 7, NECA, you name it. Despite having so many options to choose from, sometimes it can feel like there are none at all. Take into account the fact that some lines, like MonsterArts, suffer from stupidly high aftermarket prices, or the fact that some figures really aren't that good at all, or the fact that other lines, like Revoltech or NECA, are outright discontinued, making them seriously hard to find, at least for a decent price, or the fact that some figures really just aren't that good at all, or the fact that lines like Hiya, despite the abundance of praise, just might not do it for some people. Or the fact that some figures really just aren't that good at all. Whether it be insane prices, scarcity, the lack of a certain character, or just personal preference, some people might simply be drawn away from these lines and want to turn to cheaper alternatives with the same effect, like bootlegs or, if you're more creative, custom figures. If you're a Godzilla fan on YouTube, I'm sure you've seen some of those custom videos of people cutting up their vinyl Godzilla figures and adding articulation to them. It's a fun process that allows you to fill your collection with articulated figures not yet created by the premium action figure lines, while allowing you to create figures to your own liking and preference. But what if I told you that there's an official Godzilla toy line that does this? And that it's just really not that good at all. The specific Godzilla action figure line I'm talking about is simply called Godzilla Action Figure, real creative. This figure line is also known as Godzilla Rampage in the US. For the sake of this video, and to avoid confusion, I'll just refer to this line as SH MonsterArts Lite. This toy line always interested me because it's an official line owned by Bandai that straight up recycles sculpts from movie Monster Series figures, which usually look amazing by the way, and somehow makes them worse, while adding articulation in the process. Look at the 2004 Godzilla from the MonsterArts Lite line, next to the same character from the movie Monster Series, even though the mold they use for movie Monster Series really isn't my favorite either. This is literally the same sculpt but uglier and painted purely black instead of charcoal gray, making him look way shinier than he should be. It also lacks the same amount of depth and detail that the movie Monster Series version has. What's the point of recycling the sculpt if you're just gonna downgrade it? I mean, look at that. They literally smoothed it out. All the detail gone. The same problems apply to the Kiryu 2002 figure. It's literally the same sculpt, but with less details, and it even suffers from the same problem of not having the damn thing being painted the whole way through. But KaiJS, I hear you say, you don't own either of those figures. Why are you judging figures that you don't even have? Well, first of all, I've run into both of these figures in person at a nearby comic book store, and each time I ran into them, I thought to myself, wow, this looks like dog poop, I'm not buying this. And second of all, I actually do own two figures from this line, so I know what I'm talking about. Trust me, the problems do get worse. Let's start off with the better of the two figures that I own. This is the MonsterArts Lite Godzilla 1991 from Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. I found it at Toronto Comic Con last year for around $40. As you can see, the sculpt is pretty much the same as the movie Monster Series figure, but with articulation points and muted details. I guess I'll start with some positives. There's a fairly decent amount of articulation for a Heisei Godzilla, 17 points in total. This version of Godzilla isn't as animated as other incarnations, so it does get some leeway over other versions. The paint job on this figure is also pretty okay, seeing that it doesn't suffer from being painted pure black and has some nice applications on the claws. I do wish there were more ball joints in the tail since it's already pre-posed and only has 3 joints in total, counting the base. What kind of movement are we supposed to get out of this? Last time I checked, this was an action figure, not a mutilate Godzilla's tail to get somewhat of a different pose but looks seriously unnatural figure. Heck, it's literally the name of the line. Can I also talk about how much of a chore it is to get the atomic breath piece on these things? You have to detach the base jaw and replace it with a version with the atomic breath shooting out. I always feel like I'm about to break the damn thing whenever I'm trying to move it. I actually never use the alternative piece, but I forced myself through the process just for this video.
Alright, this is actually my first time putting in the breath piece, so looks pretty alright I guess. I actually do like it. It's just a pain to go through though. See, look, now I'm gonna have to take it off again. Okay, that wasn't as bad. I take it off again. Oh no. This is where it's hard because like I'm not trying to take it off again actually.
Overall, this figure doesn't suffer from much of the problems I mentioned earlier on, but some issues are still present. I'll give this figure a solid 7 out of 10, just because it gets leeway for being Heisei Godzilla specifically. Our next candidate, however, is a completely different story. Engagement check time. If you're still here, remember to comment
Playmates Gorosaurus figure. Destroy those Playmates Gorosaurus figure.
to pass the engagement check. Also, while we're here, can I just talk about how I hate having to make these kinds of videos sometimes? I don't want to be only known for my negative content, so remember to check out some of my other stuff, like my stop motions or skits. That's all, back to the video. This is the MonsterArts Lite Destroyer from Godzilla vs. Destroyer! This thing was around $50 to $60, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it actually has its own unique sculpt. It doesn't match the movie Monster Series Destroyer 1.0 or 2.0, and the sculpt is fairly decent. Surely it fares better than Godzilla 1991, right?
It's literally just that easy to just put balls on Godzilla toys. And you're telling me this is the official one? Like, how do you mess up this badly, bruh?
There are so many problems I have with this figure. Yes, the paint application is nice, at least where it's present. Front facing, looks pretty alright. But when you turn it around, oh, what do I even say here? It's giving off Mothra movie Monster Series underside, except it's way worse. They just completely neglected to paint the backside of this figure. The articulation on this thing is nothing more than pathetic. Yes, it's good that the wings can move, but were they just that insistent that this figure needed exactly 15 points of articulation? Even Godzilla had 17 and still had his restrictions, so what does that say for Destroy? No elbow articulation, no wrist articulation, no knee articulation, and a grand total of 2 ball joints in the tail. I know these are supposed to be cheaper action figures for a younger audience, but painting the back of the wings should literally be the bare minimum. Do I even need to mention how tiny Destroy is compared to literally any other action figure? I know the movie Monster Series didn't exactly provide accurate scaling either, but this is Destroyer we're talking about. He seriously got the short end of the stick. He really doesn't scale well with anything, not even Revoltech or Mezco figures. The only thing he scales well with in my collection are these Super 7 reaction figures, and I'm not even a big fan of Super 7. The potential was there, but this figure just falls flat, and fails to do the character any form of justice. With all that, I'll give this figure a solid 4 out of 10. At this point, you might as well just save up for an SH MonsterArts or Haya Destroyer. After everything I've said, I think it's safe to say that I'm not a huge fan of this action figure line. It recycles molds in the worst ways possible, features seriously limited articulation, and doesn't even bother with the bare minimum when it comes to paint. However, I won't leave you all on a negative note. Like MonsterArts, there are some releases that look genuinely impressive and promising. For instance, the heavy armed Kiryu comes with way more accessories than the first release, and features a much better sculpt and color choices that don't take away from it. This looks like something I'd actually consider buying. The same can be said for this line's 1991 King Ghidorah figure. Its articulation may be limited in areas like the legs and tails, but unlike Destroyer, it actually scales pretty well with other figures. It's like I said, the potential is there. Here's to hoping that this line continues to improve as time goes on. Well, that concludes this one. Do you agree with the things I said in this video, or do you think I'm wrong? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, remember to check out the stop motions I mentioned earlier or any of my other content. It really helps out. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all later, Kaiju Bros. Stomp on.
My playmate's Godzilla figure.